So you mentioned the wounds of religion. Tell me more.
Well, here's the thing. When I was in private practice, what I started to notice is that many of the people who came to me, they didn't know anything about my religious beliefs. They just came to me because I'm listed as a psychologist.
Yeah.
They would start to tell me some of their trauma, whether that be pastoral abuse,
Oof.
physical pastoral abuse, or spiritual pastoral abuse. There would be people who came to me who didn't feel good about who they are, and they would feel, as a matter of fact, my TEDx talks about one of my clients being suicidal. He happened to be a gay man, and we had conversations about him coming out of the closet, and he said, I just don't think I can because of these religious wounds.
Hi, everyone. I am Julie Edmonds, your host of Channeled, tapping into the wisdom of your soul.
Hello and welcome to Channeled, tapping into the wisdom of your soul. And today we have a lovely guest, Reverend Dr. Terlynn Curry. She's otherwise known as Dr. TLC, and she's a spiritual leader, psychologist, and the creator of Sacred Intelligence. She guides people to align their faith, their purpose, and their power. And I'm so excited to explore your work. And thank you so much for being with us today, Doctor.
Thank you, Julie, for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I'd really like to, let's just get started. I see on your website and, the things that I read about you that you started, or you're the creator of what we call pastology. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how that came to be?
Yes, yes, thank you. So I am a licensed psychologist as my first love and my first training. And I did a lot of work working with teenagers, adults, and all of that. And God has a sense of humor and called me to go to divinity school. So I went to divinity school saying I'm not going to pastor a church. I'm just definitely not going to do that. Long story short, I do pastor a church as well as all the other things that I do. But what I realized is that people needed both the psychology and the spiritual together. So when I first came out of divinity school, a lot of my work was around working with the wounds of religion. And I'm still very passionate about that as well. But I thought, let's bridge those two things, the psychology and ministry. And I came up with the term pastologist. And I love it because it's the best of both worlds as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned the wounds of religion. Tell me more.
Well, here's the thing. When I was in private practice, what I started to notice is that many of the people who came to me, they didn't know anything about my religious beliefs. They just came to me because I'm listed as a psychologist.
Yeah.
They would start to tell me some of their trauma, whether that be pastoral abuse,
Oof.
physical pastoral abuse, or spiritual pastoral abuse. There would be people who came to me who didn't feel good about who they are. And they would feel, and as a matter of fact, my TEDx talks about one of my clients being suicidal. He happened to be a gay man, and we had conversations about him coming out of the closet. And he said, I just don't think I can because of these religious wounds, right?
Well, I guess he probably came from a very strong religious family, right?
Or he believed that his family
Oh,
was.
his own beliefs. Okay.
Yeah, because there are plenty of families who will kick you out. And so he didn't know what his family would do. And he also went to church. So even though he was no longer around his family, they had moved and he was on his own. He did go to church, but he didn't know how other church people would respond to him. And so he carried this weight with him. And I just kept saying over and over and over. As a matter of fact, I had a retreat just recently, and a woman was telling me that the Catholic Church kicked her out as a child
Wow.
because she was an illegitimate child. That's devastating. And
Yeah.
that's not godly to me. And so I found myself being drawn to work with these people who were wounded by religion. And while that is still very passionate for me, my work shifted a little bit. And I had to begin doing more work on dismantling racism because of what's going on in the country. And so over time, I've done probably more work in the last few years on the dismantling racism piece. But at the same time, I'm a pastor and I'm a healer and I'm a spiritual director. So a spiritual leader. So if people are wounded in whatever way, I get to merge those two things. And let's face it, racism is also steeped in religion as well. So it all is about the wounds of religion. And it is all about merging those two things I love, again, which is psychology and ministry together to work as a healer.
Wow. That is so common what you're talking about. And I think a lot of people hide behind it or hide from it and just carry that and never, ever are able to heal from those wounds. So I admire your work and I think it's wonderful. Um, Tell me a little bit about the sacred intelligence that you talk about. How do we, access that?
Mm. So sacred intelligence is really just going inward and tapping into the divine that is within you, the sacred that is within you. And what sacred intelligence does is it helps us to make choices, intelligent choices that will manifest our greatness. Because your sacred intelligence will never tell you to do anything that's harmful to you. It's all about helping you to manifest your greatness. Now, the key is while you're manifesting your greatness, you also help other people to do the same thing. So it's not about I'm going to get what's mine and forget about everybody else, but it's about as you come into the fullness of your being and who you are, how will you shine your light out into the world? And here's the beautiful thing about sacred intelligence. It will help you to be mindful of what you do to yourself, what you allow other people to do to you, and what you do to other people.
Wow, that's a beautiful answer. I love that. So when you heal yourself, you heal the world or you heal the others around you. And I truly believe that with my hypnotherapy practice and all my spiritual practices as well. It's more like a freedom rather than a containment. It's like a freedom where you feel free and it gives other people the permission as well to heal. And so, Mrs. TLC, tell us a little bit more about the sacred intelligence that you talk about. How do you personally tap into that, or how do you coach your clients on tapping into their sacred intelligence?
That's a great question. So for me, I have a morning routine. And my morning routine really involves me getting up and spending time with the sacred so that I learn how to hear the sacred's voice from my voice and anybody else's voice. So that means spending time. So for me, it might be prayer. For someone else, it might be meditation. I do a lot of journaling. So I have a gratitude journal and I write in that gratitude journal. I try to almost every day. And then I have my regular journal where I just free flow and I tap into that which is sacred to me. So sometimes it might be that there's an issue that I'm trying to discern, and I'll write about that. And other times it might be just, good morning, beloved. Right? I have all these names that I call God, but like, good morning, beloved. And then I just start writing. That gets me in tune to hearing the things that are important for me to work on that day or work on in my life, what my yeses should be, what my nos should be. It's a period of self-reflection. Again, it's pulling in the psychology and the sacred together. So inside of each of us is the divine, however you define that divine. And it's a power that is in us. And that is the voice that we need to train ourselves to listen to. So with my clients, when I'm working with my clients, I have them to develop a practice, but I also may give them some prompts because for some people, not having structure drives them crazy. So I might give them some prompts to, sit for a few minutes, just sit in quietness for 2 minutes, write about what comes up, right? Don't stress about the things that are just flowing through your mind. It's okay.
How do you get rid of those? So everybody has these disruptive thoughts, and I think they just need to block them out. And you're saying let them flow. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I don't thi- Now, some people are able to block them out, but I've been with some great meditation leaders in my time. And what they will say is just let them flow. Let them flow through, acknowledge that they're there, but then you come back to your center, whatever your center is. Sometimes we use a word to bring us back to our
Oh, okay. So do you have a word?
My word might be different for the day. So I might actually do breath prayers, which I will say like inhale in quietness, in confidence, and then I'll exhale, excuse me, my strength. In quietness and confidence is my strength. So I'll inhale and then exhale. And it just brings me back to like, it's like a mantra, right? You can find it. It could be peace. It could be shalom. It could be any word that you feel will bring you back to your center. The main thing is don't fight the distractions that are going there. Just keep coming back through. I wish I could tell you that after all these years that I don't have any distracting thoughts. I absolutely do. And what I also find works well for me when I'm in my time with the sacred, I find that if I either speak aloud my prayer or if I'm journaling, it's not interrupted by those thoughts. But if I'm just, no, go ahead.
No, sorry. And how long is this practice every morning? Is it 10 minutes, 5 minutes, a half hour, an hour? Do you just have that already into your day, like scheduled?
It's not scripted, but it's scheduled because I do it the first thing in the morning, because I find that if I don't do it the first thing in the morning, something will happen to interrupt me. And once in a while, like this morning, I got a phone call that I knew I needed to take because I was a little late with my practice. So my gratitude journal is half done and I'll do it by the end of the day. But I had already written in my other journal late last night. So I'm constantly feeding myself and asking spirit to always speak to me. That's the other thing. Because when you do that, you cultivate a practice, spirit will speak to you about simple things. And so let me give you an example. Last Sunday, spirit spoke to me 3 times, at least 3 times. So on my way to church, there was a parishioner that I had not seen in a while. And spirit said, you'll see that person at church today.
Wow.
She was there. The second thing that happened on the way to church, I was thinking about someone else I needed to call to check on. Something happened to that person's parent. So I had to call that person anyway on Sunday. But in my mind, I already knew you need to check on them. And then the third thing was I went to an event and I was taking some of my books to the event. So I have a book, a book of prayers, and I have some books on dismantling racism. So this event that I was going to, I was taking the dismantling racism books. And I said, so I had a couple of the prayer books in, and I said, you should take more prayer books because you're going to see so-and-so at this event.
Wait,
Now,
I ask you really quickly, is that a voice you hear? Is it a feeling or just a knowing?
it's a silent voice that speaks to me.
Yeah.
And so I said, but I didn't do it because I was rushing. I said, oh, well, I'll just give her the number of books that I have if she's there, and then I'll get them to her later. She was there. These are simple ways that spirit speaks to me, but there have been other more profound ways. Sometimes I'll know when I'm going to be working at a particular location, and I don't know when, but spirit will say, you're going to work there one day. And I do.
Wow. So I think it's so important that our listeners and, everyone around us learns to just listen to, tap into, and understand that sacred intelligence or that highest self, that divine soul, that oneness is within all of us. Now, I'm sure that it's taken some time, over the course of your life to sort of build that, get those reps in, and start to learn to trust that. Was there a certain moment in your life that these things just started happening and you started hearing, the spirit talking to you, you started trusting it? Or was it sort of a step-by-step process? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So for me, I have always been raised in the church. So there's always been this firm belief to believe that God is going to direct your path, that God is always with you. So I don't know a direct moment when I felt like spirit was always with me, but I can remember from very early on, particularly when I got out of college, that spirit would just, there would be a knowing. And I wouldn't have identified it at the time as, oh, this is the spirit telling me this. But like, for instance, I remember once when I was completing a master's degree, and I remember saying, oh, you know, come August, I'm going to work at NIH. Now, I didn't apply to NIH. I didn't do any of that. I started saying it 8 months before it happened.
Wow.
When August came, someone said, Terlynn, here is a job description. They're looking for someone at NIH to work in their National Institute of Mental Health department. I can't do it, but it looks like the perfect thing for you. I interviewed, I got the job, but Spirit had already told me I would be doing that. That has happened to me repeatedly. And I can't describe a particular moment when I knew, but inside of each of us, there's a knowing. You have to trust that knowing. See, what happens, Julie, is that the world tells us something different. And you have to decide, am I going to trust myself and my inner knowing, my inner being, my sacred intelligence, or am I going to listen to what the world says?
Oh, wow. Other people's voices, other religious beliefs.
Yes.
They're just things that you've grown up with that aren't your own. So tapping back into our true identity and our authentic self. It's such a beautiful message. So I have a question for you based on what you're saying. So you had this message that you were going to work at NIH months and months prior. We talk a lot about, I talk a lot about manifestation and sort of projecting into the universe that, there's certain things that you want. Do you feel that that was already on your path and God told you, or was that something that you were able to connect with and manifest that in your life?
So I think that it was a both and maybe back then I didn't know as much about like manifesting, right? Because I really believe that God directs my path, but I believe wholeheartedly in us manifesting what we want, because I don't believe that God does everything for us. We have to do some things for ourselves, right? There's a verse that says faith without works is dead. So I can be faithful all I want to, but if I'm not putting in the work, or if I'm not really believing that this thing is going to happen, it won't. So I do believe in manifestation. As a matter of fact, my daughter is a powerful manifester. And someone told me this morning, well, she got it from you because you've always had it, right? And this child, she one day I was asking her if she wanted to go to something with me. And she says, no, because I might get tickets to go see Ariana Grande. Now, the concert was the very next day at 4:00. She had no ticket and I wasn't paying for it because I'd already paid once for it. So she says she visualized herself just being in that concert. The next day, 24 hours later, she calls me. I'm outside of the house doing something. And she says, Mom, I got my tickets to see Ariana.
Oh, I love it.
And so I've taught her to see yourself in a place wherever it is that you want to be. If you do the work that you need to do, there is a force that comes with you that will help you to, realize that manifestation. And so that's pretty much how my life has been.
Well, I love this conversation. So I believe too that, and we talked about this a little earlier in our conversation about the wounds and how when those other voices are there, those things that have happened to the past, or you're living not so authentically, but you're living in someone else's light or someone else's belief system, that is really difficult to manifest or even hear your spirit. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I've experienced myself, like just healing any past trauma and wounds and all kinds of things, that when you got rid of those, then there's this huge vessel to receive, and you just have this flowing creative space, and the Ara Grande, I can't say her name, the tickets come, things like that, the new opportunities for life. So let's go back a little bit, because you're a psychologist. You have a master's from Yale and a PhD. How do you intertwine all your spirituality with that?
Yeah. So my PhD is in psychology and the master's is in divinity. And here's the thing that I want to be sure that I say to your audience. It is always important for us to question. The thing about psychology is that I always have to ask a lot of questions. And actually, I think I'm a psychologist because I do. I just grew up asking questions. But if you are in a religion, if you are in a family, an organization, a relationship where you are not allowed to question, run.
Wow. Wow. Run. Now, what if they can't run?
I believe that there's always a choice that we make. And sometimes those choices are very, very difficult. And sometimes those choices are dangerous. But I think we have to decide, am I going to live under somebody else's beliefs and rules, or am I going to change? In our history, there have always been people in organizations or religions or families where they didn't feel like they could run, but they chose to, and they prevailed. So I don't want to be flippant in my answer, but I just wanted to give your audience some agency to understand that maybe you can't run today, but you can run 5 years from now. And what will you do to sustain yourself? How will you keep your mental capacity during these 5 years? Continue to ask the questions, because in asking the questions, it means that you get to a place where you say, hey, maybe what they're telling me isn't right. And you begin to change your thinking. And once you change your thinking, you begin to change your actions, right? And so I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a family where I could ask a million questions about the Bible. And I still ask a million questions about the Bible, and I still question God. Like, God, really? Right?
Yeah.
I know that God loves me and God is okay with me doing that. And so I just want to encourage your listeners, if it is at all possible for you to begin a process of exploration that even scares you a little bit, do it. Shake you up a little bit, because it's in the shaking that you will move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's that saying, don't believe everything you think.
Absolutely.
So
Thank
you,
God.
oh, sorry, you said run. Now, what exactly are you referring to? Because that could be run away from the church, run away from your family. I mean, that's a very strong, you know,
It is strong. And so run looks differently for uh, everybody.
yeah.
So let's start with the church. If you're in a church that does not believe that you should question, I absolutely mean run. Get out of it. Now, that is hard to do because some people are married and they're in their families, and one person is feeling this way and the other one is not feeling uh, oppressed. But at some point, you have to make a choice. You should not be in any religious organization that will not allow you to question, because that's not who God created us to be.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. You're a reverend, you're a doctor. It sounds like you're speaking from experience. Um, can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I know we talked about, you know, wounded religious beliefs and things like that. Maybe we're circling back through that again, but I know you're talking from experience. I'm sure that you've had people that have been in these situations, and, you know, I'm sure there's an undoing and a painful process. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And honestly, there are a lot of people who are writing about church hurt right now. That's what they call it. I say wounded by religion because I believe that we have these doctrines that are put into place that keep certain groups oppressed. And if you cannot be in a place where you are free to question and come to an understanding, not just that I'm telling you this, but questioning so that Maybe there is something that I'm doing that I need to maybe modify a little bit, but help me understand it in a loving way. But if a place is telling you don't be who you are, that there's a certain script for you, that you need to show up in a certain way, that God doesn't love you because you are a certain way, that is not of God. And so we understand things very differently now than we used to, right? We've evolved in our thinking. And so we need to be in a place where we can self-reflect on who God is for us, how God shows up, to see if this religion doctrine is consistent with what you know God to be for you. It takes a long time to get over church hurt. I can't tell you how many people I see who are very concerned about coming back into the church. They will say, I'm never coming back into the church.
Wow.
And I will say to them, it's about finding the right place for you, because there is value in having a church community. There is value in having a support system. There's value in being able to come to a place and really affirm your faith. It's yes, you could be at your house and have church and find God, but there's nothing like being in community.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with you. So, it's interesting because you're saying, if someone's telling you you have to be this to be loved by God, it's interesting because just in my line of work with hypnotherapy, and the same with, with your psychology, the patterns of pain they don't discriminate. They're all the same. It's all the same within every human being, whether they're not good enough or they feel too different or things aren't available to them. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're coming from, or who you love.
Right.
Pain is pain is pain. Wounds are wounds are wounds. Acceptance and connection is just that. And, I love what you're talking about. The community is so beautiful. Let's shift gears here for a second, because I know, you talk about generational patterns and recognizing those and sort of breaking some of those. Let's talk about that a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So I think we first have to recognize what those patterns are.
Yeah.
We have to recognize the reasons why we do things. I guess it comes back to questioning again. So it's like that old story about, the person who cooks the ham and they cook it in a big pot and they can't put the top on it, right? And so they keep cooking it that way because that's how their parents did it. But it turns out that the reason why their mother never put a top over it was because there was a ham bone that they couldn't cut. And so they couldn't put the top on it, right? We have to say, why do I behave in the way that I do? I can still love my parents and think about, did my mother do the right thing when she told me X, Y, and Z? I'll tell you something I was just talking to someone about this morning. I can count the times I saw my mother cry
Hmm.
on one hand. So that was a lesson for me about being a strong woman who doesn't cry. It was subtle, but it was a lesson. I remember when my child was younger, the one of my daughters, and I would tell her, "You have such and such time to cry." That's it. That's a horrible thing to say to a child.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about it, now that she's an adult. I said, "I am so sorry that I ever said that to you." And I probably told her that even in high school. It didn't stop her from crying. But that's a horrible pattern. My mother never said it to me. She never said, as far as I can remember, stop crying. But I saw her not crying.
Yeah.
So as a psychologist, I know we need to get that crying out. We need to express it, and it's okay. So if we're going to break generational patterns, the first thing we have to do is to become aware of what those patterns are. Stop and listen to yourself. Stop and listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. Stop when you are responding in a certain way and say, wait, why am I doing this? Where did I get this pattern from? So that we can disrupt it. But I do want to say this, Julie, before I forget. Go get therapy.
Yeah.
Go get hypnotherapy. And be careful who the person is that you go to therapy, to go get therapy from. Even if it's a pastor, be careful. because sometimes those people have their own agendas,
Mm-hmm.
right? So sometimes people will say, are you a Christian counselor? No, I'm a psychologist. I don't define myself as a Christian counselor, but if you come in and you have Christian things that you want to talk about, I'm right there with you. But if you think you're coming in for me to tell you based on what I believe the Bible says about you and how you should live your life, I'm not that. I'm not that counselor, right? It's for us to work through this together.
You sound like the spiritual counselor connected to source and helping someone tap into their own true authentic power. This is what I'm hearing from everything that you're saying.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about weeping and crying, and there's a saying that we say in hypnotherapy that what you hide becomes crippled inside.
Mm.
So, I love the story that you said about, your mother and how you've learned to cry. And, the one thing that we do is another saying. I keep coming up with these quotes I remember, but say that mom is the word for God on the lips of a child. And so when you're younger, that's it. What your mom is doing and saying, and that's it. That is God. That is who we are. And it takes some
Absolutely.
it takes some undoing in life, from my experience, to you don't need the approval of your parents after a while. And there's where the generational healing starts to begin.
Right. Well, and I'm also fortunate. I mean, look, I love my mom and my dad.
For sure. This is
I absolutely feel like I got the best with them, right?
I love that.
And even with that, I didn't grow up having the conversations with my mom that my children have with me.
Right.
I have very different children because I went from the moment that they came out, allowed them to talk. Now, truth be told, there were moments I would say, why can't you just do what I tell you to do just because I told you to do it?
It's hard being a mom. Trust me, I get it.
Yeah, I did not have those types of children. And even now, they are young women. And I'll tell you, they hold me accountable all the time. And it helps to have young people in your life who can help you to understand things that you don't understand.
That's
So,
monumental, though, for you to be able to say that as a mom and accepting the fact that you don't have all the answers, and you want them to show up and help you grow and get better just as much as you want to be an example for them. It goes both ways.
it does. And so you have to just be open because they don't let me get away with anything.
Awesome. I love that you were able to also correct some of your behavior and apologize to your daughter and say, wait, hold on. What I told you in the past is not, let's change that. Let's change that. That also helps, because when someone hears "and I'm sorry" from a parent, that is healing in and of itself. And so any parent out there, because I know after going through hypnotherapy, and we're all well-intentioned parents.
Yes.
So you yelling at your child that wasn't like trying to be it was well-intentioned. Or I mean, I have plenty of stories where I look back, but I can't stand in guilt. I just look moving forward. How can we change this? How can I apologize? How can we change our behavior together? Because I've noticed when I've become different, my children reflect that lightness inside of me too. So
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what's really funny. We can laugh now because those teenage years, you know,
I'm
that's
dealing with that.
okay. But there will come a time where you can laugh. You'll look back on some of the insane conversations that you have with one another or your responses. But here's the thing that helped me when I had teenage children. At the heat of the moment, when you're like feeling like that, and whether you're a minister or psychologist, you know all the tools to use. But in that moment, when they're saying something to you, hormones are kicking. I mean, this is the realness. This is the reality, right? And so, one of the things that would bring me back, to my centering, I would say to myself, "Do you want to be your highest self right now?"
Mm.
And it would always bring me back to who I am.
Now, did you have a rubber band that you had to snap to remind yourself?
No, it was just a question. It was a question that, now, if I didn't ask myself that question, ugh, who knows,
Yeah.
right? But there would be moments I would just do it because I could feel it. If you're
I know exactly what you're saying. And those moments, that awareness is so huge, what you just said.
absolutely, because I love my kids and I love teenagers. I work with teenagers for years, but they know how to push your buttons to the highest. This is the thing, whether you're a parent or whether it's someone at work, you are the one that's in control of your behavior. You
Yeah.
learn to respond and not react. And that's a tough thing to do, but that's why it takes practice. So if I'm asking myself, bringing myself back to that sacred intelligence, it's like, what do you want to do in this moment? What is your goal in this moment? And it takes a practice. It gets back to the questions from before. It takes a practice. You won't wake up tomorrow, doing these things. Go to therapy, get a hypnotherapist, get someone to walk with you through this process. Something like the wounds of religion, that may take years.
Um,
Yeah.
well, those triggered moments anyway, there's always something deeper going on. So it's not just a moment of, I lost my patience. There's a deeper triggered something. There's a story deep down underneath that's really, really pushing that triggered, where on a scale from 1 to 10, you should be about a 4, but instead you're a 19. It's like, that's the awareness too. So stopping and asking your highest self. And then the next part is, well, wait, what's really going on underneath here? And that's where you can really discover some things. So, well, I love this conversation we're having.
Mm.
So I know, to wrap things up, I want to touch on a little bit about, you talk a lot about dismantling racism, in your work. Can we talk about that for a few minutes?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's so much to say about it, Julie, but
Yeah, how can we do this in 2 minutes?
I'm what we're going to do. Here's what we'll do in 2 minutes. I think anyone who is interested in dismantling racism, I think that there are 3 things that I would offer. One, we have to say to ourselves, what's my sacred motive for wanting to dismantle racism? Secondly, we have to ask, what is my selfish mindset? And then thirdly, we have to say, what will be the shared movement? So what do I mean by that? Are you trying to dismantle racism because you think that this will get you some brownie points, so to speak? Are you doing it because it's popular, like we saw people doing in 2020, 21, 22? Or are you doing this because you believe in something greater than yourself? And then the selfish mindset is more taking a look at yourself. Taking a look at, do you have faith that you can do the work that's needed to be done to dismantle racism? Do you believe that there are other people out there who are doing this work as well? What do you believe about the possibility of dismantling racism? Do you think it's just hopeless? So there's nothing for me to do? And then thirdly, when I talk about the shared movement, it really, really means, what can we do together, Julie? I'm not out here by myself doing this work. So I talk about all of it in my book on dismantling racism because it's a process. I didn't just start doing this work overnight. I've done it actually for years and had sort of put it on the side, not put it on the side in my own personal life, but in terms of the work, because I was working on the wounds of religion. But with all that has happened in this world in recent years, I had to return to it, return to it actively, because there are people out here who need training in it and who need help in it as well. And so there's a lot of work to go around for all of us, whether it's dismantling racism, wounds of religion, living your best self, all of it. So
Well,
that's,
oh.
yeah.
And racism, not just a black or white, it is a religion, it is a belief system, it's everything. So I love this conversation with you, Reverend Dr. Terlynn Curry, otherwise known as Dr. TLC.
Thank you
So
so much.
You're absolutely welcome. Tell the listeners, tell us all where we can find you.
Well, you can go to sacredintelligence.com. You can learn more about me there. You can also buy my books wherever my books are sold, because I do have a prayer book in addition to the Dismantling Racism. And
What's the prayer book? What's the prayer book called?
So the prayer book is called In Quietness, Confidence, and Strength, and it's an ecumenical prayer book. So in quietness, confidence, and strength. And it's really about expanding our relationship. So I talk about our relationship with the sacred, our relationship with ourselves, and our relationship with other folks. And that book actually came out of me doing prayers online during COVID and during the height of, when George Floyd was murdered and all of that. So I just developed these prayers that teach us how to tap into ourselves.
It's all related. It's all connected.
It's all related. So it's ecumenical, no particular religion. So I invite people to pick it up.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. And for the listeners, if you love our channel here, Tapping into the Wisdom of Your Soul, please subscribe, send it on to other people. And thanks again, Dr. TLC. It was wonderful having you.
Thank you for having me.